Hi, today we're going to be talking about harnessing AI to build custom apps and widgets in D2L Brightspace for non-programmer admins. In this session, we're going to talk about how we used AI tools like ChatGPT and other AI programs to completely change the way we build smarter tools and solve tricky problems by using D2L APIs and Data Hub from within D2L Brightspace without having a degree in computer coding. If you've ever wished you could automate a process, run an API call, or build a custom widget but thought, I'm not a developer, I don't know where to start, then this is for you. I'm going to share how we used AI to help learn and build custom tools for our admins, faculty, and students, from troubleshooting code and testing API calls in Postman to building real tools that help our college every day. We'll walk you through what's worked for us, what didn't, and how you can get started too. By the end of this session, our goal is simple. We want you to walk away with practical, real-world strategies for using AI to enhance your D2L admin work. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining our presentation. My name is Justin Bamberg, and I'm the LMS Admin and Multimedia Design Specialist.
And I'm Kaylee Nelson, the LMS and Learning Design Specialist. We both work at the e-learning office in Delta College in the Great Lakes Bay region of Michigan. Today we're going to walk you through how we used AI to build custom widgets and web pages inside D2L Brightspace.
First, we're going to cover the problem. Then we're going to be looking at the AI-powered solution, learning the API landscape. Fourth, we're going to look at widgets, tools, and some of our wins. And then last, we'll talk about the lessons, limitations, and takeaways. This isn't a technical deep dive. It's a conversation about how AI empowers non-programmers to build smarter tools and solve real problems, even with limited coding experience.
Let's start with the problem. As LMS admins, we're asked to do a lot. Pull user data, run custom reports, support instructors, students, and other stakeholders, and build custom solutions that the platform doesn't support natively or just needs to be tweaked to meet our needs.
Brightspace is incredibly flexible, but that flexibility often requires API knowledge, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And unless you have a computer science background, that can feel out of reach. But it doesn't have to be if you're willing to learn and have an open mind.
We would find ourselves saying, I know D2L has this data, I just don't know how to get to it. Or, if I could only grab this information and then load this other information to get the full picture.
The turning point was learning that ChatGPT and other AI tools can help us bridge that gap, not just by generating code, but by explaining it, debugging it, and helping us learn along the way. We use other tools like Claude and Grok as well for when ChatGPT gets tired.
Our goal wasn't to become coders, even though I am taking a few classes to learn how to code. It was to build functional, maintainable, and secure widgets and pages in D2L. ChatGPT gave us the confidence to try, explore, and solve problems.
And once you do try, you learn to use better prompts, understand the language and terms to create even better prompts. It isn't perfect, and it can be long and frustrating. Being non-programmers, sometimes we just don't understand the code or what to ask if something just isn't turning out right. It is frustrating, but it is also rewarding when you finally get something set up right and you magically get the data from the API call or the process that completes. It's not all about data. We also code tools to run processes as well. We started by exploring the D2L Brightspace APIs using Postman. There's a class that D2L provides that walks you through the basics of using APIs in D2L, but I found it lacking in many areas and not as clear in some areas. Postman, a free software, is a tool that lets you run API calls and inspects the responses using JSON. The next thing to do is to read through the D2L API documentation. If you are confused about what you are reading, ask AI to explain it in a way a non-programmer would understand it. Lastly, join the developer group and the data analytics group on Brightspace community. We aren't going to get into the details of how to set up Postman, but we have a link to a video discussing our setup and how we run API calls at the end of this presentation. This might not be the same for you, but it works for us.
We leaned on ChatGPT to write the headers and body structures in JSON and translate the error messages when they didn't work. AI helped us understand the logic behind API calls. Using GET commands are easy, but post and put is a lot more difficult, especially if you don't have the JSON body perfectly formatted. AI doesn't always get it right. Sometimes you need to try different things, go back and forth between documentation, and ask questions in the developer group.
We not only learned how to run API calls within Postman, but how to run them in the web browser, inside widgets, on a custom web app page, built into D2L. One of the most difficult parts of learning all of this is authentication. How it's done, how is access protected, and who has permissions to run things. Before Kaylee joined our team, I struggled for nearly a year understanding how to run an API call in D2L. The breakthrough came when I realized, with the help of AI and a few key tips from the developer group, that we didn't need full OAuth 2.0 authentication. Instead, we could use our session access token, the token that's used when you're logging into D2L, and the XCSRF token header through a simple Brightspace fetch function in JavaScript. That changed everything for us. So what is XCSRF token? Think of it like a secret handshake between your code and Brightspace that proves you're allowed to do something, like get grades or enroll a user, because it's using your user login access. Me, as an admin, have access to being able to do most of these tasks, and so that token grants me that access to run those API calls. CSRF stands for Cross-Site Request Forgery. Websites like Brightspace use this token to make sure that your request really came from a trusted page. Without this token, Brightspace might say, wait, I don't trust you, so no access for you. This token is stored in your browser when you log in, and you can grab it from the local storage, like this. You may or may not know what that means, and that's okay. I'm not expecting you to. Let AI help you walk you through that process and build that code out for you, but I wanted to highlight it here just so that you can see what it looks like. What Brightspace Fetch does is it creates a custom function we write so that we don't have to keep typing the same fetch code over and over. Instead of writing all the stuff about headers and tokens every time, we make a helper function once, like this, in JavaScript. Before we move forward with showing you how to create a simple custom widget pulling API data, let's walk through what it looks like in Postman and in the browser. When running API calls in the browser is able to process the request for GET commands and then show that information in the browser as JSON. You can't just take the URL in the request and place it in a widget or web app and expect it to do something. You need a way to process the information within the code. That might be confusing to understand, but that is the way it works. Postman is built to process JSON, and so are web browsers natively. But to view, manipulate, and structure results in your widget or web app, you need a way to process it. But first, we need to talk about the two different types of API calls and their version numbers that can be used with them. These are well documented on D2L community. They are LE and LP. Within every API call you use, knowing these are important for structuring the API call. What is the difference between LE and LP? You can look at it in a couple of ways. Simply, LE stands for Learning Environment. This is everything that lives inside courses, content, grades, quizzes, Dropbox folders, etc. And LP stands for Learning Platform, which handles calls for the core system of D2L, like users, roles, org units, course creation, and enrollments. Think LP equals admin stuff, and LE equals course stuff. Now we're going to run the API calls for LE and LP version in the web browser and in Postman. If you're currently logged into D2L, open a new tab and go to your site org URL and add /D2L/API/LE/version/ or /D2L/API/LP/versions/ and you will get the similar results as the top image. Since your setup for Postman might be different, I'm not going to walk you through all of that. At the end of this presentation, we'll provide a link to a Google Drive doc, which will give you all the resources you'll need. What's great about D2L API calls, if you're only looking to run GET commands, you can do it within the browser without having to use or install Postman. The advantage of having Postman set up is that you can run post and put commands, as well as keep all your API requests together and organized. Let's walk you through how we create custom widgets using API calls. We're first going to look at this as a 5-stage process: planning, prompting, prototyping, testing, and then the final product. Using an API call, we're going to just make a simple Who Am I widget. And this widget will just display the user's name and their username. Before we start our prompt, we need to know a few things. 1. What API call should I use? 2. What data do I want to display? And 3. How or where will this data be displayed at? If you ask ChatGPT, the AI will suggest some ideas. It might be the Who Am I API or the My Profile API. Every API call has its own properties and might not have exactly what you need. This is why we run multiple API calls in a series to get all the data we need. For instance, Who Am I will provide this information. This is fine for what we want for the simple widget, but if we wanted to get the user's org-defined ID or email address, we need to run a different API call. But this is where the problem is. For a student, they have limited access to which API calls they can pull. They are able to run the Who Am I, and they can run the user profile API call, which would provide this information. Now this is a lot of information, but it doesn't provide any information useful for our needs, as this is all personal information the student can enter into their profile. So for our simple widget, the one we want to use is the Who Am I API call. Now that we know which API call to use, we can build the prompt. Let me walk you through this process. First, we have the prompt. Then it gives you the answer. Get all the code, something easy that we can copy and paste into our widget. So we're going to copy the code, we're going to drop it into the widget, into the HTML window, and then we're going to take a look at it. Since I didn't really like it, I asked ChatGPT to make some changes. Here we made some changes. I like the new look. But there was still one more thing I wanted to add. I needed to add a space between the two texts. So I add that, pasted the new code, and it's ready. What's nice about using AI is that if you don't like what they presented or what the design turns out to be, you can always ask for it to be changed. And you can also try other AI software like Claude or Grok if you want a whole different design idea. Now that we have an introduction to what an API call is, what data we can pull, and how to build a very basic API widget, let's start to explore some of the other things we can do. For this next project, we will pull a list of courses the user is enrolled in. We have used this call for both faculty and students. For faculty, we have used it in multiple places. In a custom widget for pulling the dates, so faculty know how many days they have left to submit grades, for custom forms for course merge requests, and for quick access to a list of courses. For students, we have done similar things. We built an admin dashboard. It allows us in one window to search for a user, pull up their list of courses, and jump right into it from just a click or two. We also are building a student dashboard, which will list the course and their current grade from one window. What do we need to get started? I first think about the result. What do I want to get back in the data, and then work backwards from there. What do we want to see? We want to see the org unit ID, the org unit's name, the org unit code, and let's add roles as well. I know that I only want to see course offerings in my list. I don't want to see the main org listed or any of the groups that I'm enrolled in, just the course offerings. There's a couple of ways to get the ID number of a course offering. In Postman or on the web, you can run the OU types API call. This will give you back a block of JSON. All you need to do is look for something that looks like this. For our organization, course offering is listed as an ID of 3. We can add that to our prompt for ChatGPT to ask for the results to be filtered to show only course offerings. The hardest part of this project is that we need to make one additional API call first. Why? The reason is simple. D2L API calls don't include everything. Some API calls allow for using org-defined IDs or usernames, but most are driven by the user ID. The user ID is the number that D2L gives a user in the database. For Delta College, we don't use this number. We primarily use the org-defined ID issued by the college that connects to the student management system. There are 2 ways to grab the user ID number, and the first makes this web app pointless. You could go into Admin Tools, Users, search for a user, and roll your mouse over the name, and you can see it in the URL, but then that defeats the purpose of this web app. But what we could do is run another API call first, and then use that data to load the next API call to get the enrollments. This is what we're going to do, and it only takes seconds for that to process. We will add this to our prompt, that the code should first run the getUser from org-defined ID API call, which will grab the information I need. When I run that in the web browser, you get this JSON. With this information, I can ask ChatGPT or my AI of choice to use this information as well. I'm not going to lie, the first time I created this, I didn't have my prompt clear enough, so I had a lot of errors. You will experience errors, and then you'll learn from them. Common issues that happen with D2L and JavaScript are usually related to variables that have the $sign in the code. The second time I ran the prompt, I made things more clear, and it worked right out of the box. I'll show you both on how I fixed the error-related prompt, and then the second prompt where it came out perfect. So for this first failure, I'm just going to quickly show you how running this first ID number created an error message. It created a Brightspace fetch error, and something was not set up correctly. I didn't write it correctly in my prompt or something, because what it did is it didn't identify the ID number to run the first API call, which was the get user information. So something wasn't set up correctly. I'm not sure exactly what went wrong, but it wasn't picking up what I needed it to. Running it through ChatGPT, they were able to figure out what the error message was, and then I asked for it to provide an updated code. I took that updated code and popped it back into my web app. Just by editing the HTML button that's on this HTML page, I was able to make the updates, do a refresh, and try it again. Now I created the next error. So you're going to see this frequently, and you're going to have to write it in your prompt, that it uses that $sign a lot using JavaScript, especially when you're using replacement strings. And so that's mainly what that error is, and it kept coming up a couple times, so I rewrote the prompt to specify that this is clearly the error. I know that this is the problem because I've seen it before in many of the other applications I've created, and so I tried to make it clear to ChatGPT that this is a D2L JavaScript type error kind of a thing, and that needs to be stripped out of there when it processes the request to make sure that that $sign doesn't go with. If the $sign goes with, it replaces it with the organization code number for the course, and then it creates that error message. So once we tried it again, and then that didn't work, and then we tried it another time, and then I think by the second time around, it finally understood what I was saying about the 6605 with the $sign. 6605 is our organization number. Your organization number will be different, or could be different than mine. We are using that $sign again, and so it's still adding it. I really needed to strip that out completely, and so it's going to rewrite this code again to work on removing that $sign. It's going to provide a new updated HTML that I should be able to just grab out of there and then load right back into my widget. Eventually it does work, but it doesn't process the results the way I wanted it to. So I rewrote the prompt to make sure that I had everything that we needed in this. And there you go. We have some results. It's just not the right way. So I wanted to have 4 columns, and so I made some changes, but it does link over. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go through the whole process from start to finish about how I set up a custom page inside D2L to run this code using this prompt. This prompt is long, so I'm going to quickly walk you through this process. So here we have a prompt that asks to use the D2L API, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. We're creating a web app. It talks about the different kinds of authorization that we're going to need, as well as which API calls we're going to be pulling. So we need to pull from the org-defined ID to get the user ID number, then run that through the enrollments. Once we run it through the enrollments, we're going to provide some example code on what it looks like when I use the org-defined ID number to pull the user's information and then where to get that user ID in the code. So it's going to read through that code, know which prompt. It's going to read through that code and be able to identify which field to grab for the ID number, the user ID number, to be able to run it through the enrollments app. So then I provide the enrollment information so that I can identify what it's looking for and which one to filter for regarding to ID number 3 in the course offerings, and then what it should be looking for in the enrollment file. So I need to make sure that we are getting the ID, the name, the code, and the role name. But I also want to make sure that the user's first and last name is listed, as well as their org-defined ID is also listed someplace on this. So then it's going to lay that out completely. I also need to have some pagination in case the code provides many courses, so showing 10 courses per page. And then I want to make sure that I've specified about the $sign to make sure that that gets stripped out properly. And then I ask the same question, do you have any questions? Because sometimes the AI doesn't fully understand what you're looking for. And if you ask that question, it'll come back with questions for you to clarify certain tasks. So then when we do that, then we actually run the application and it provides the code. All right, let's talk through what's going on here. So again, here we are showing the prompt. And then the answer from ChatGPT, kind of going over what we're asking for, making sure that what we're asking is correct. And then it's going to go ahead and create that full code for us based on what that prompt requested. And then it'll give you some suggestions at the end of what you might be looking for. So I've copied that information. So I'm going to go up to the admin tools, organization, files, and I'm going to create that web page. So first I'm going to create a new folder. And then inside that new folder, we're going to create a new folder again, and then that new folder will be called Get Enrollments. And then inside there, then we're going to call that new file. So this is going to be considered an HTML file. That file is going to be called getenrollments.html. We're going to go into the code feature of the source code of this particular page. We're going to drop that ChatGPT content in. It's going to kind of give you a preview since it's already styled into the code. Click Save. We're going to save that file. Now we're going to go back over to the admin tools, find external links. We're going to create a new link, but we're going to create a new category first. We're going to drop that into a new place. Get enrollments is the category for this link. We're going to add a title for this particular link. It's going to kind of match our same theme here of get enrollments. We're going to go to course files. We're going to find that folder we just created. We're going to grab the folder inside there, click on the HTML, and now we've linked to it. So we're going to click Save. We're going to click on the external link tool, so it kind of shows you all of our links. We're going to click on that one, and there's our web app. So we're going to first type in our number, click the lookup button, and it's going to load in everything that we need. So we want exactly how it's listed. We wanted the user information. I wanted the first name, the last name, the org-defined ID, as well as that first course ID to link over to that course itself inside D2L. So now this web app can be used in many places if you're creating custom dashboards, or if you are using this as just a quick way to list those courses out. So if you knew a student's ID number, you could quickly type that number in, load in all of their courses, and be able to click through each one as they needed to. Now you could expand this. This could include current grade. This could include other various information. But for right now, this just links over to that particular course. Quick, easy. One thing I forgot to add in the prompt was console messages. And so I'll add that into the finished prompt at the end of this presentation. If you prefer, you could always create your code and separate your files. If you want to link to a CSS file or you want to link to a JavaScript file separately from outside the HTML page, you could do that using a software similar to like Visual Studio Code, where you can build out that HTML page, link to those CSS files and that JavaScript file. And then you can take those files and you can upload them to that folder if you prefer to go that route. The idea for us was to process requests quicker and more efficient. Have you ever searched for and pulled up enrollments for a user on a mobile device or iPad? This tool works very well for that. It's built into our admin dashboard we created that is mobile friendly, so we can quickly pull up a user's enrollments when we are out of the office at any time.
We might only be using basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but ChatGPT has helped us clean it up, make it accessible, and adapt the layout without us needing to master every single detail. This is extremely helpful because as much as we want to be master coders, we also work full-time supporting faculty and students through their education.
As shown in the complex app is the ability in D2L to add folders to the organization files folder and build entire web pages, link to other folders in the directory, and run entire programs within its walls. These pages can be linked in navigation bars, widgets, or by direct link from the external links page.
After the first widget, we have created a number of helper projects that have one use purpose. Course Creator with Demo Student and Faculty Enrollments built in, Quiz Export to Word, Add Student View Role to a course, pulling activity log data after a user has been unenrolled, reports on never attended, and a variety of other simple apps that run in D2L. JavaScript is great for running web apps, but we have also created Python desktop apps to process data quickly as well. A simple widget we created is a welcome widget that pulls the name of the student with replacement strings and the student's ID number. We found that a lot of our students don't know their student ID or where to even find it. This is one of many problems we were able to solve. Since we didn't want to have two welcome widgets, one for students and one for faculty and staff, JavaScript was able to create one widget that reads the user's role through an API call and provide the correct widget information. We have used similar logic when providing details based on which browser and device they are using and passing the correct information to the user. Custom but simple solutions.
One of our latest projects we created is the Faculty Navigation/Information widget. We were noticing that our D2L homepage was getting cluttered and needed a new way to organize the widgets. Since we still needed the information to be easily accessible, we created a custom collapsible mini navigation widget that combines all the faculty-related tasks and information into one widget. Using JavaScript to run a number of API calls, we were able to streamline some of our processes. Once we had the basics down, we started building more complex web apps, web pages, and widgets, like course search by semester, list all courses in a semester, view class list in a list of courses, enrollment tools, sandbox creator with auto demo student, created and enrolled into the course, new course creation with the ability to add the instructor right in the window, user tools like search for user, create a user, view users by roles, role lists and glossaries, grade tools, last date of attendance and last date of activity reports, course access reports, canceled course checker, user add and drop audits, and a bunch of other tools that made repetitive tasks easier.
Each feature used an API call that we tested in Postman first, and then we adapted it into a JS function with AI help. When we ran into issues such as pagination, date formatting, search filters, we would paste the problem into ChatGPT and get a step-by-step explanation or a revised solution. One key thing that we learn is to be specific with our prompts and avoid general and basic directions. The more clear and detailed you are with your prompt, the closer you would get to your results. If you're unsure what to ask, sometimes we would talk to the AI about possibilities and problems to sort out our thoughts. Then we would create a meaningful prompt with these conversation points. If you struggle with creating a prompt, at the end ask, "Do you have any questions?" And many times this will prompt the AI to ask you follow-up and clarification questions.
AI isn't always right, but it's a great co-pilot. You'll still need to read through the docs and tweak some things manually, but it's part of the game. The key is to build in small pieces and validate the results. Then I make larger changes. I make a copy in case it goes terribly wrong, which it will. D2L API versions matter, and so do D2L permissions. Check the documentation. Always handle sensitive data securely. Don't expect perfect results the first time, and expect that trial and error is going to be your common theme. And enjoy the learning process. The key for us is that we run everything inside D2L, where we know only those users that have access to our D2L instance can access what we create. Plus, we have user role controls on certain areas of what we build. So only faculty can see faculty tools, and students can see only their tools, not faculty tools. Some of our final thoughts. You don't have to be a programmer to build great tools in D2L. If you have just a little curiosity, a willingness to experiment, and the right AI partner, you can create some really cool tools.
If you ever thought, I wish I could build this myself, well, now you can. Start small, test often, and let AI guide you.
Thanks for joining us. We're happy to share code samples, answer questions, and help others get started. Our contact information is on the end slide, as well as a link to our prompts that we're using, as well as some other additional tools for you to use.
Your next custom widget might just be one good prompt away. Even if you're not a coder, AI can help you go further than you have imagined. You just need curiosity and a good prompt.